You're listening to Optimise et al., a technology podcast powered by Naviate.
Hello everyone and welcome to this podcast. My name is Bettool Jabur and joining me today is James Bell from Ridge. Hi James.
Hi there.
Thank you very much for joining me on this podcast where we're going to be talking about something that you presented recently at the Nordic SPIM Summit. So the topic for today's podcast is database and database management, etc. There's a lot going on with databases at the moment. But first of all, tell us, what is a database?
So in my view, just kind of working from a basic Google of the dictionary sense of this. So a structured set of data held in a computer, accessible in various ways. So it's a very broad, all-encompassing term, I suppose.
Do you know, James, I actually put this through ChatGPT, okay? And the answer that I got out of it was, a database is an organized collection of data. Okay, so it's used the word data in here, that is structured and stored in a systematic manner, exactly what you've just said, to facilitate efficient data storage. So there's actually a lot happening in that first part of the paragraph there. We've got, a collection of data. First of all, we need to get hold of that data. What is that data? How are we going to place that data in a way that is that's understandable, I suppose, and the retrieval and management of that data, which is what we're going to be talking about today. It also goes on to say it is designed to manage large amounts of information and provide quick access to specific data when needed. So this is the gem, really, isn't it, that we're going to be talking about throughout the podcasts together.
Yeah, and I guess that's, well, what it gets to there seems like that's the an idea. That's an ideal or a database that works well, isn't it? You wouldn't want one that's inefficient. But I'm sure there are some.
Yes, absolutely. I think definitely. I think that's a good way to kind of start looking at understanding what a database is and digesting that. But how is it that you've come involved with databases, James?
I guess for myself, it was that's kind of my view on the software we use in architectural design. So whether or not everyone sees it as this, but to me, Revit itself is just quite simply a database.
Not many people see that way. They just see it as, oh, it's this design process. They don't think about the background work. They don't think about the database.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And it's certainly a discussion that I'd want to have more around, even just in our office, because to me that was kind of the eye-opening moment where you kind of think, kind of on my journey anyway, of kind of learning Revit, early days, you start off with thinking, I'm not sure that's possible.
Absolutely. I had exactly the same journey. Yeah.
Until you get to the point where it's actually, well, we've got all of this data, it's all in there somewhere. Just how do we access it and how do we use it? So that really, that was kind of the eye-opening moment where I was like, Revit is simply a database tool. As long as someone has input the data, we can output it. We can choose the output format, and potentially anything's possible with it.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a similar journey at the start. So I would probably say the first maybe 6 to 9 months of me using Revit, I had the same kind of mentality of, oh, no, Revit can't do that. No, Revit can't do that. But then when you realize that you can actually work with it, and like you say, it's a database. Once you put in the data that you need, you'll start to churn out the designs and things that you need, the configurations that you need. Okay, so with regards to database then, is this something that we kind of do very quickly? Is it something that's generated very quickly that we work with? Or is it something that's there in everything that we do?
Yeah, I feel like it's there in everything we do, and as almost on the journey of a project, it's a developing database, I suppose. So very, from the early RIBA stages where you're collecting the client requirements, that's the start of the journey, and all the way through to stage 4 construction information, detailed design. It's kind of where you're getting towards the refinement of that information before it's built, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a bit more then about your journey with databases and what you've done at work. So I know that you've looked at leveraging a database in design. Tell us a bit more about that and that journey or that case study that you've been through.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, the case study and the journey of that case study was very much the discussion point and the presentation that I went through at the Nordic BIM Summit. And yeah, it was very much about a new project in the door. The main driver to get us to sort of think differently and challenge us was actually one of the client requirements or the client deliverables of an equipment and space date schedule. So an accommodation schedule and equipment database. And from the requirement of that deliverable, we kind of asked ourselves, how can we use this to facilitate more efficient design, essentially?
Where did that drive come from? Can we use it as an opportunity? So the drive came from within rather than a client-driven.
Yes, yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it was the client. The client was simply saying we require this output of an equipment database. So they wanted that was their requirement. It was internally where we asked ourselves, can we utilize this in a better way? And that question wasn't necessarily myself. And that's one thing I do like about, always with, collaborative design, working with others, people just chucking out ideas. They're saying, is this possible? And then others look at the question another way and like, yeah, let's give it a go. See if we can.
That's a good team though, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good team. We challenge each other to kind of work smarter in the way that we're delivering and in the way that we can produce things, even for our clients. Even if it wasn't, even if it wasn't a requirement, is kind of looking beyond that. So what was some of the challenges maybe that you might have experienced along the way as you was trying to kind of work with the databases and manage the databases, if you like?
Yeah, so certainly, on that case study, and as an example, when the project landed and the question was asked, can we do this? It was certainly yes, but in the position where we were as a business, we were certainly modeling, for example, pieces of equipment and volumes spatially at an early stage, but not necessarily in a smart way. So, for instance, if we had an accommodation schedule, for example, from a client, we know they want a certain number of spaces of a certain size. We'd maybe model it in SketchUp or a massing element in Revit, but it wouldn't be connected to the data in any way. It would simply be a standalone piece of modeling.
Yeah, that part of the jigsaw, I suppose, was missing at that stage, isn't it? You wanted to somehow tie that database in with that. So what happened next, James?
So, yeah, we kind of knew that the database we knew that the equipment list would be developing alongside our design. We knew that the schedule accommodation would be developing alongside our design. And this is an early sort of stage 1 design. So we knew we would need we knew we'd either be completely remodeling each time we got a new set of data to work with, or we work smarter and we find a set of families that we can create that each time the database updates, it can update the families at the same time. So that was then what led us to essentially the creation of a very basic set of Revit families that a simple square or cube even that represents a piece of equipment or a room, and through basic XYZ geometry, pulling that in from a database along with any other parameters that we want to add to it. For instance, for a piece of equipment, power, compressed air, any of these kind of MEP requirements. Not only can we drive the geometry, but we can update all of the MEP requirements on those bits of equipment.
So with regards to the geometry here then, are we talking about a simpler level of detail, a lower level of detail, but much more level of information within those objects? So you have your simple blocks, which then can make the software run a bit faster because you're not so detailed on that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about at the early stages of design, keeping it nimble and agile. We want the files to be as quick and easy to use so that people can move blocks around, test ideas, and not get too bogged down in the in the detail as such.
Yeah.
At that early stage, a room could compress and be longer, and that was also a key part in the kind of the families that we created. So we created one for a piece of equipment and another one for rooms. And the key element to the rooms was that the area always stayed the same, but you could push and pull it so that the room might get more rectilinear, or you could push it back to being a square, but the overall area stayed the same.
Yeah.
To kind of facilitate the key requirements of each space.
Mm-hmm. So the idea from concept design stage with some data within there, would you say that placing in that data at that stage is kind of a bit of a risky game because you don't know, it's still a concept design stage, even though we can utilize these elements later on, or these families that are created in Revit terminology, even though we can take those later on and utilize them and extract that data? Was there not kind of this fear? You might have this voice in your head to say, oh, this data you're putting in now, you're wasting your time, it's not going to come in, it's not going to be handy. Did you ever, or did anyone in the team ever think like that?
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that, because that is, it's almost the ongoing concern with BIM as a design tool, and putting in too much detail too soon, and then a design change comes around and you've lost loads of wasted time effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was what was key to keeping these as kind of generic families, but I suppose the parameters that were applied to those families being trying to map out that kind of foresight so that those parameters can be applied to future spaces in the model. So seeing it as can we transfer the from one the parameters from one block to what will form part of the BIM model later on.
Mm-hmm. And this kind of takes us back, isn't it, to the definition at the start, is that accessibility. Yes, we put in the data, yes, we put in the information, but then it's the accessibility later on. And how did you kind of make sure that everything was going to be kind of nice and clean and clear? Did you have a 500-page document at the start of your project that specified this is how we're going to name everything, this is the names of the parameters, etc.?
We probably should have done.
Lessons learned for next time.
Yeah,
500 pages, really?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
No, this was very much, and sometimes this is often the way. Even on a live project, they are sometimes still the test bed for new ways of working.
Yeah.
So, certainly, if we should have had a rigorous naming strategy and bits and pieces like that. We didn't in this circumstances, and there was a lot of finding our way with it. even down to the parameters we were using. We started off with project parameters. Later on, we thought we're probably going to need extra, other consultants in the design team to be able to use these parameters. So we'd swap them out for shared parameters and bits and pieces like that. So it was a lot of finding our way with it, to be honest. Trial and improvement.
Trial and improvement. I like that. There was no negativity in that sentence at all. Brilliant. So with kind of looking at what you want and what you're trying to get out of it and for future lessons, is that project now completed? Has it been completed? Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of timescale, that project came about actually in the at the start of COVID in 2020. So, and it's built on site now.
Built on site, perfect. And in terms of looking at that data and the facilities management of that, has that helped the client, the one who's using the building at the moment? Has that helped them in terms of facilities management?
It's an interesting one actually that I'd perhaps like to revisit. I was only personally involved in the project very early on, and it was actually a project that was delivered abroad. So our involvement was actually handed over following a stage 3 design.
Yeah.
So whilst I'm aware that others have continued involvement to some degree at post that, it's certainly that would be a next step for me, I think, to understand how the facilities management has gleaned any ongoing benefits from our design.
Yeah, maybe it could be a joint visit. Who knows? Maybe we can go and check out to see the facilities ourselves as well. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much, James, for talking to us about the journey that you've had with databases on this particular project, and how we can kind of look to see and investigate, and kind of look to see and investigate the way that we should really approach projects and keep that open mind. I think the open mind that you had here is actually not restricted you on the project. You kind of put that voice to the side to say, no, we will add those parameters in. Yes, they will benefit us later on. If you'd like to find out more on what James Bell has to say, then join us in the next episode of this series. Thank you for listening to Optimise et al., a technology podcast powered by Naviate.